Hey fam, I want you to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications. Let's talk about the whole issue of Virginia blackface and racism. Reverend Dr. William J. Barber, of course, he's been quite vocal on this. And he appeared this morning on Morning Joe, where he said that the focus should not just be on Ralph Northam and the issue of racism in 1984. He is challenging the media and the public to contend with acts of racism and bigotry happening in 2019. Watch this, and then we'll discuss.
Well, repenting in the Bible and in the story of Zacchaeus, when he wanted to have salvation come, Jesus said, okay, restore what you've done. So some people said earlier, resign, resign, resign. I stepped back and said, wait a minute. Because if you resign and resign to resign, you only get to somebody who participated in racist voter suppression. So if the issue is resigning because of racism, for instance, the entire Republican legislature in North Carolina has to resign because they were found guilty in the courts of surgical racism. So let's step back a second. The repentance could be Northam doing a major speech on what racism really is, and then immediately laying out policy. For instance, he could say the Union Hill African-American community where environmental racism is happening because of the Atlantic pipeline. I'm going to no longer support that pipeline. I'm going to go after voter suppression. Now, I'm going to fight for same-day registration, early voting in Virginia, and automatic registration. I'm going to look at the issue of public education and mass incarceration. Not just look at it, but now. But just having an apology is not enough. And just only talking about, and I challenge the media, if we only talk about racism when somebody talks about the size of someone's calves or a picture 30 years ago, we are not dealing with disparate impact and real racism that's happening. We need to look at what's happening in the appointment of these federal judges on the courts. We need to look at disparate treatment in health care, the disparate treatment in living wages. 62 million Americans make less than a living wage. 54% of them are African American. We need to look at all of this voter suppression happening across the country. So we need to have a real serious depth focus on racism and how that ties to systemic poverty, ecological devastation as well, the war economy, militarism, and the false moral narrative of religious nationalism.
So let's unpack this first with our panel. And Greg, I want to go to you first. The real issue, though, is that what Reverend Barber just said. It also has to take place by those in media. You now have Morning Joe, Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski now calling out Trump for his attacks on brown people. But they also had him on their show in 2015, in 2016. You know, they talked about advising him when he first got in on certain folks to bring on and appoint. Now, all of a sudden, when he shows his true colors, which we all knew beforehand, now it's, oh my God, who is this guy? Same thing. You look at CNN, the number of town halls and forums they showed of Trump. Now it's, oh my God, he's now attacking the media. Obviously, Fox News completely in bed with Donald Trump. I dare contend that the fundamental problem that you have with the inability to confront the issue of race in our public policy today is because unless it's a burning flag, unless it's a swastika, unless it is this overt symbol of racism, mainstream media will not drive this conversation.
No, of course not. In fact, it's interesting. Joe Scarborough makes me laugh out loud when I accidentally scan past him in the mornings getting ready to leave with his condemnations now to say, well, we have to call out a lie. And I'm laughing because, of course, for years, as you were talking about Trump lying, in the same broadcast studio floor as him, they were talking about their friend, Donald Trump, he and Mika. And let's be very clear. Talking about individual acts of racism, as our friend Dr. Barber says, allows systemic racism to hide. That's why they're so happy to talk about these individual acts. Morning Joe every morning enables some of the most virulent reproduction of systemic racism on a regular basis. I mean, in this same today or yesterday morning, perhaps it was this morning, they talked about the anti-Semitism and, get out of Representative Ilhan Omar's face with that anti-Semitic charge. It doesn't hold any weight. You can't attack AIPAC. You can't have any criticism. They are not going to deal with systemic racism. And talking about overt acts of racism allows them to hide behind this lie that they somehow want to address racism, when in fact they want to address everything but racism.
Shannon, again, this is not for me an issue of Republican or Democrat. What it is an unwillingness of people to have a real examination of these issues and how they play. If you really want to talk about education today, like for instance, we've had these debates where folks have said, "Oh my goodness, charter schools are the reason our schools are segregated today," and I'm going, "No, they were pretty segregated before charter schools, because you have to now look at neighborhoods. You now must look at income." When you begin to talk about other issues, environmental racism, you have to deal with many of these environmental catastrophes deliberately being placed where poor people live, where black people live, and brown people live. And again, I just think that the reason you do not have the substantive dialogue that is deeper than mustard on a hot dog is because you have mainstream media that is only interested in the flavor of the day, can't do two things at one time, and does not have the structural ability to be able to confront this, because the executive suites of many of these media companies are largely white men who are not concerned about these issues.
Well, I don't think it's just they don't have the structure, they don't have the desire to confront it. And it really comes to that, because if you desire to do it, you will find the structure to do it. But they don't want to. And I do agree, it is not, it being racism is not confined to one party. One of the things that, for me in Maryland, is that there's a Black Republican Council. And when people say, well, what does that do? Are you, an apologist for things? No. I explain to people how to keep their toes out of their mouths. And that's how I break it down for folks. I ask you, do you like salt or sugar with that? Or would you like me to show you how to keep those toes out of your mouth? So in doing that, I come across a lot of folks that genuinely don't recognize how ignorant they are. Like, they're blind to it, not deliberately blind. No, I mean actually no concept and clue whatsoever. So to fix that, you have to recognize there's a that to fix. And a lot of these folks don't. They genuinely don't see it. Oh, you're just emotional,
Teresa,
you're just sensitive.
Teresa, the point Reverend Barber is making is that if you want to examine Northam, you have to say, okay, Governor, why is it during the campaign you supported a pipeline that is going to run through and devastate a black community? Justin Fairfax, the Lieutenant Governor, did not support that pipeline. That is a substantive issue that, again, should be addressed, but frankly, it is not one that you're likely to see discussed on any of these mainstream shows. Black shows like this one, yes. Them, no.
You won't, because like Pastor Wright said, they don't have the desire to. It doesn't matter. You know me, Roland, by now, I'm always going to relate something that happens mainstream locally. And so, like, with the issues that's happening, especially in Philly, that's where I'm from, and some of the union issues that's happening, especially with the police department. We just had a case the other day. 18-year-old young woman was grabbed by her hair, literally all caught on video, grabbed her by her hair and slammed to the ground. Police officers calling every other name in the book, Black B, stupid HOE. Well, I guess I could say that. So, I see these things, and, gratefully our DA did not press charges. But what you now see is is the union either being silent about it, which tells me that leadership has to change, right? And so conveying it back to what we're talking about with Pastor Barber, he wants the same thing. He knows change that needs to happen, and he's wondering what will it take in order for the systematic change to happen? But I also think it needs to be, instead of us just putting diversity in the rooms, there has to be a whole cleaning of the behind the scenes of senior leadership who's been there for 30 and 40 years with the same mindset.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Calling all HBCU alumni, students, as well as leaders. Ford is looking to improve mobility in HBCU communities, and they are offering up a $25,000 mobility challenge grant. Now, here's the winning program will receive a grant of up to $25,000 to implement their proposal. The deadline to apply, folks, is March 31st, 2019. We want you to go to FGB.Life, FGB.Life for more information and to apply. Don't forget, the deadline is March 31st, 2019, and Ford goes further in our community, and we certainly thank Ford Cares for being a partner here at Roland Martin Unfiltered for them supporting HBCUs.
Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video.